This is the Patriots Prayer Network, where truth matters.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. I am Alexandra Levine. This is Alexandra 360 right here at the Patriots Prayer Network. Breaking news Sunday night. Joe Biden decided to pardon his son, Hunter Biden. But wait, I thought Joe Biden said that he would never pardon his son. He said it on multiple occasions. And we have some of the clips that Billy's going to show showing that Joe Biden did pardon his son. And not only did he pardon his son, there we go, President Biden officially pardons his son, Hunter Biden. Not only did he pardon his son from the guilty plea that Hunter Biden did, he pardoned him all the way back to 2014. Or as we know, Hunter Biden and his father actually committed a bunch of crimes. Hunter Biden personally committed illegal business dealings with Ukraine, China, but all of that is just thrown under the bus after Joe Biden pardoning his son. And of course, in the statement, quote, President Joe Biden, I never call him president, Joe Biden stated that, I did want to follow, the rules of the law, but I see that they're just trying to persecute my son. This is a personal matter. And I felt as a father, I needed to pardon my son because this is just a witch hunt. Oh, really? Considering that Hunter Biden has done illegal activity for many, many years that has been documented. And also, there's massive amounts of evidence on Hunter Biden's laptop about the salacious activities that he's done. He's a known pedophile. His laptop, which was exposed by a man named Garrett Ziegler, who owns the Marco Polo Project, actually put out pictures of incestuous things that Hunter Biden did with his niece. His niece was 14 years old at the time. It shows explicit pictures of her giving fellatio to her uncle. I hate to put that out there for my viewers, but it's the truth. And also incestuous relationships that he's had with other members of his family, but also the fact that he's a known sex trafficker, child trafficker, human trafficker, doing salacious things with young girls under the age of 18. This is a true fact. So we're letting this pedophile basically go free, and we're allowing every illegal activity that Hunter Biden did to just be swept under the bus. And what do these Democrats say? What has Joe Biden been saying for years and years? They said this about President Trump, quote, no one is above the law. Well, let me tell you something. I never want to hear that coming out of a Democrat's mouth ever again. There's no way that Hunter Biden is now above the law. It's crazy. And we all know that these things that the Democrats have accused President Trump of doing are false accusations. The 34 fake convictions against President Trump, we know are fake. It was actually one fake conviction that was literally rewritten 34 times by District Attorney Alvin Bragg. And he needs to be gone, by the way. We all know this. But no one is above the law. Hunter Biden is a known pedophile, did illegal business dealings with Ukraine and China, but he is getting away with all of this. And it's interesting how the timing happened. As you know, I know Kash Patel personally. I met him many times. There's pictures of me with Kash Patel at multiple dinners in the Maryland area. Kash Patel was just appointed by President Trump as the new FBI director. We know that Kash Patel is tough. He's smart. He is known for activities that he's done with the NSA, with national security. He worked with former Congressman Devin Nunes. He exposed the Russia hoax. So President Trump appoints Kash Patel. Democrats, rhinos, special interests, and lobbyists freak the heck out. And what does Joe Biden do? Pardons his son because he knows that Kash Patel will go in there and expose everything. And he would have possibly found a way to lock up Hunter Biden forever, which he needs to be locked up because of the crimes that man has committed. Joe Biden's family has committed a bunch of crimes, and Joe Biden's brother has committed a bunch of crimes. And it's interesting. Somebody said recently, and it was actually former Congressman Matt Gaetz, said, don't be surprised if Joe Biden's brother gets pardoned very soon. So this is what's happening, guys. This is what's happening months before President Trump takes the Oval Office, January 20th of 2025, is that all these illegal immigrants are coming into this country. We have a huge caravan coming in from Mexico to the United States. And then Joe Biden pardons his son. And now Joe Biden's going to pardon everybody that has committed crimes against humanity and crimes against this country. This is why we, the people, voted against this. This is why we, the people, are going to hold these Senate rhinos accountable if they don't confirm Kash Patel, if they don't confirm Pete Hegseth, if they don't confirm RFK Jr. and many other good people that President Trump has appointed. It is a crime that this is happening and that Hunter Biden is getting away with all of this. And again, we have confirmation that Joe Biden is a liar. He said multiple times he would not pardon his son, but I knew it was a lie, and we the people knew it was a lie. Instead of acting like the, quote, commander-in-chief, he went personal and soft with we the people. Again, the phrase, no one is above the law, shall never come out of a Democrat's mouth ever again. So where do we go from here, guys? Where do we go from here? There was a question asked to, quote, Dr. Joe Biden by a reporter. Are you okay with, your son being pardoned? Are you cool with this? And she says, yes, it's my son. I completely support my son, Hunter Biden, being pardoned. It's insane. The man is a pedophile. The man did incestuous things with his niece when she was 14 years old. It is all over his laptop. I have friends that work for the NSA. They work in the IT department. They're in charge of cleaning the servers, cleaning Hillary Clinton's server, cleaning the Hunter Biden server and the laptop, cleaning the Pakistani that was working with Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz from Florida. That laptop is being cleaned right now and combed. And if you don't think that the FBI is shredding documents before Kash Patel gets in there, don't be naive. The DOD, the NSA, the ODNI, the FBI, all the big agencies are scared out of their minds of Kash Patel coming in. They're scared out of their minds of Tulsi Gabbard coming in. She's going to be the DNI director, and they're scared of John Radcliffe coming in as well. And anyone else that President Trump appoints. They're also scared of the DOGE department under Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. And unfortunately, the deep state and the establishment are trying to stop Elon Musk and Vivek from doing their job because they're all scared. The Senate rhino Republicans are scared as well. We got Senate rhinos that are saying that they're not even going to confirm Pete Hegseth and other great people that President Trump has appointed. Pete Hegseth actually just met with a bunch of senators on Capitol Hill yesterday. And also Pam Bondi did, and Congresswoman Elise Stefanik did as well. Because all these people have to go through Senate confirmation to get through. Why are the Senate rhinos stopping this? Why is the deep state and the establishment so scared? And why can't Senate Republicans, why can't the people of power listen to we the people? Again, they work for us. We don't work for them. They have to remember that. And they know it too. I said this Sunday night on an interview that I had with Bob Siegel from San Diego. And I said it last week. I'm going to say it again. The special interests and the lobbyists on Capitol Hill are detriments to our nation. The majority of them are Democrats. They make $400,000 to $1 million a year, and they control the power of the purse. They're the ones that have the ears of rhinos, deep state, Democrats, establishments, people on Capitol Hill. They're the ones that are dangling the money and saying, you have to do it this way. You have to vote that way. You can't push this person. You can't confirm that person. Or we'll stop helping you. We'll stop funding you. We'll stop campaigning for you. It's very sad. I make the pledge that special interests and lobbyists need to be removed from Capitol Hill. They're poor influencers, and they get paid. They get paid to influence poorly and to push hardcore Democrat socialists and hardcore establishment rhinos into power. They push them so hard that you can't get rid of them. Remember, senators are in there for 6 years. No term limits on Congress. No term limits on these senators. No term limits on these congressmen. Congressmen are up every 2 years. Something needs to change. It's not the political consultants that are the problem, even though there are some that work with special interests and lobbyists, but it's really the special interests and lobbyists that are the problem. I've seen it on Capitol Hill many, many times. So what are we the people going to do? We can't sit back and let this happen. We have to do everything we can to help push President Trump's agenda forward, to push the America First agenda, to push the mandate, because we, the people, voted for this mandate, that we reject socialism, we reject socialist ideals, and we have to push the America First agenda and the MAGA movement. It is a movement that will surpass everything. It is a movement that needs to thrive. It is a movement that the deep state and the establishment rhinos didn't see coming. There are people in other states that rejected the establishment rhino agenda. For example, I'll bring it up again in the state of Maryland, where I did a lot of campaigning. The people of Maryland rejected the biggest rhino of all, Larry Hogan. They rejected a lot of rhinos in Maryland and in some liberal Democrat states. The state of Pennsylvania went heavily Republican. Scott Pressler did a lot of great work. The Trump team did. I worked up in Pennsylvania for President Trump. We did the work, mobilizing people to register Republican. We mobilized people to vote that have never voted before. And we even mobilized people to switch parties. So what are we going to do, guys? Just sit back and let our country fall? Let President Trump's appointments not go through? No. We, the people, need to rise. Conservative voices need to rise now more than ever, because President Trump can't do it alone. He needs us. He needs his voters. He needs his supporters and his most hardcore loyalists like myself, who's a part of his hardcore base, to push his agenda forward and to push the America First MAGA movement forward. That's what we voted for, and that's what we want, and that's what we, the people, voted for. Coming up after the break, we have a very special guest, Colonel Chris Wyatt. He worked for the NSA. He has a great background and a great resume, and he will be right back with me after the break.
Do you have old home videotapes that you're no longer able to watch? Need them transferred to DVD, Blu-ray, or your smart device? Baltimore Digital offers professional-grade VHS, mini DV, and high 8 digitizing services. We can also convert Super 8mm film too. Baltimore Digital also provides photo restoration services. Visit archive.baltimoredigital.net. Mention code Alexandra for a 10% introductory discount.
And I just want to say a shout out to my sponsor, Adam Reuter. That's baltimoredigital.net. Again, we have a very special guest, Colonel Chris Wyatt. We're going to bring him up right now. And he is an amazing guy. He worked at NSA. He's got a great background, and we're going to bring him up right now. Hello, Colonel. How are you?
Hey, Alexandra. Good evening. I have to talk to Billy. I don't think I like using that photograph of me looking like the man in the mountain there from CPAC 2022. That's when I was.
That's a better photo for you.
Yeah, no, that's what you did pick a better photo there. Me, it goes back a few years when I was at the Army War College as a student. The that photo from CPAC, I was on the stage with the mainstream media cameras back there recording when President Trump said, the fake media back there. And I was on the stage. That didn't include me, obviously. Well, thanks a lot for letting me join you this evening. I hope we have an interesting conversation. I'm sure we will. It's not like anything big is happening around the world.
Yeah, really. So tell us just a little bit about yourself for my viewers, Colonel.
Absolutely. I grew up all over the country, wound up in high school in rural Appalachia, and lived on a dairy farm in Southeast Ohio, lived in the Midwest, lived in the projects, 300 families, only 3 were white, everybody else is black, lived in a poor neighborhood in Buffalo, New York, where everybody was Puerto Rican except me, didn't speak Spanish. And ironically, I speak 6 languages now, 3 of them African languages. Spent 36 and a half years in the Army. 34 of that on active duty, 23 years deployed overseas with 5 combat tours. And I worked at the National Security Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, Iowa State University, where I taught undergraduates, Army War College, where I taught postgraduates. I'm a published author in academic circles. I'm an independent journalist now. I travel around Africa and around the world covering stories. And I also do sports and sports broadcasting for rugby. I do play-by-play and color commentary and rugby broadcast every weekend. So I keep myself pretty busy. A lot of different eclectic interests. I've run HIV programs, tuberculosis programs. I've hunted terrorists. I've taught militaries to obey the rule of law. I've taught at foreign military institutions. I attended L'École d'État Major, where I'm a graduate of the Tunisian Staff College, an Army War College graduate. I did international development studies as a graduate student at Iowa State University. I got graduate degrees in strategic studies, also international relations. And I've worked at the African Union, the European Command, the Africa Command, the Pentagon, and it just goes on and on. So I think I'll stop there.
Well, that, like I said to my viewers, you have an impressive resume, and that is amazing. Thank you so much for your service and everything that you've done. So going back to my opening monologue, as you know, Joe Biden decided to pardon his son after he profusely said he wasn't going to pardon his son. What do you think about that?
Well, I never doubted that he was going to do it, so it comes as no surprise. The entertaining part for me is watching the left meltdown. Oh my gosh, what have you done? Now Trump can pardon anybody. We have no high ground. That's never stopped them before. As soon as Trump pardons somebody they don't like, they'll just jump right back on their bandwagon. I think that it's truly abusive because these aren't crimes that are being forgiven out of mercy. These are being forgiven to cover up Joe Biden's crimes and the Biden crime family. And it's going to backfire. Because if the Republicans retain control of the House and they get around to it after the busy agenda that needs to be taken care of in the next 90 days, and they decide to open hearings, Hunter Biden cannot invoke the Fifth Amendment. He cannot be found guilty of the crimes. He has been given freedom. So if he goes to Congress and he refuses to testify that the big guy is Joe Biden, well, then guess what? He'll be in contempt of Congress and he can be put in jail for that. Just ask Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon.
That's 100% correct. And let me ask you to follow through with that. You know, President Trump, he appointed Kash Patel as the new FBI director, and then all of a sudden Joe Biden decides to pardon his son. Do you think there's any correlation between the appointment of Kash Patel and Joe Biden pardoning his son?
Well, I think there's 2 things in play here. Number one, Joe expected he was going to be president again. When he hit a little speed bump, that kind of forced the issue. As long as the DOJ was there, he probably could have gotten a lenient sentence. And if it was something that was going to result in prison time, then he would have stepped in while he was still president and pardoned his son in his next term, and it wouldn't have been an issue for him. Then I think that when he was pushed aside in the palace coup, he kind of hoped that Kamala would, get him across the finish line, expect her to take care of the pardon. That didn't happen. I think that the entire political left establishment around the country, and in fact, those who deal with the FBI around the world, are wetting their nappies right now, as they say in the United Kingdom. They're wetting their diapers because Kash Patel is no nonsense. This guy's the real deal. And contrary to what the left is saying, he's not qualified, he has no experience. In fact, he does have experience. He is qualified, and he's no nonsense. He's no James Comey. All these people that have gotten away with all kinds of criminal conduct, James Comey, Lisa Page, Peter Strzok. The list is endless of the conduct of the FBI, the harassment of people who are at abortion clinics, arguing for the right to life. It's endless here. The raid on Mar-a-Lago with 34 cop cars, body armor, automatic weapons, the CNN tipped off so they could be there at the dawn hours. Meanwhile, nobody shows up at Joe Biden's garage when he keeps, classified documents next to his 68 Corvette or whenever he bought the darn thing. And, he keeps them in the so-called Biden think tank. That's an oxymoron if I've ever heard one. They say military intelligence is an oxymoron, but that's truly an oxymoron, the Biden think tank in D.C., where known Chinese espionage agents have been frequenting that building. He just left it unsecure. The man has not been treated in the same fashion. So I think that there is a direct correlation, and Biden is scared. And he thought his son was going to go to jail, and he doesn't really care. He claims he's caring about the rule of law, but he's never cared about the rule of law. Look at all of his executive actions. They consistently evade the Constitution. When he's smacked down by the circuit courts or by the Supreme Court, he simply goes around them and tries to do it again. The student loan forgiveness is the biggest example of that. But everything he does is in violation of law. And so I'm not shocked at all. And I do think there is a tie to Kash Patel. A lot of people in D.C. are running scared at this moment on the political left.
So why isn't Joe Biden pardoning the January 6ers?
Well, because they led an insurrection. Did you miss it, Alexandra? I mean, it was crazy. I mean, the 500,000 people that were out there, they all it wasn't 500,000 that actually went in the building. It was just a few hundred. But yeah, no, he's not going to do that. Of course not. This is ironic. Where is Human Rights Watch? Where is Amnesty International? Where is the American Criminal Liberties Union, the Southern Poverty Law Center? None of these fake organizations that claims to care about human rights is actually even remotely engaged. All of them were engaged over Guantanamo Bay, where unlawful combatants were housed legitimately under the rules of law and the law of land warfare. The only problem with that is we've never tried them. That's disgraceful. That's not the point. They were taken there legitimately because they were unlawful criminal combatants on the battlefield, and we followed the rules. The problem is that all these organizations were screaming lawsuits. They're being mistreated. They've got luxury accommodations. They've got mosques to pray in. They are not mistreated. They're allowed to pray 5 times a day. They're allowed to exercise their faith. Meantime, we have Americans who've been put in prison, federal prison and DC prison for trespassing into a government building, many of whom were welcomed in by law enforcement. That doesn't obviate the fact that some people committed crimes. There's a fact, that's true. But people have been locked in solitary confinement for 3 years without due process. This is a clear violation of the Constitution. Not even charged with a crime, trying to break people psychologically. These are human rights abuses, and Joe Biden is complicit in this. So is the Department of Injustice and Meritless Garland. These people are criminals, and I can't wait for a new FBI and a new Department of Justice, and I want to see some real use of justice in the next term.
Well, let me ask you, Colonel, and we'll move on to another subject. There's Senate rhinos, of course, are freaking out like Lindsey Graham. They love Christopher Wray, and they say, Trump appointed him. He's supposed to live out his tenure to 2027. We can't have Kash Patel. We have to have Christopher Wray in until 2027. What say you about that?
Well, what I say about Lindsey Graham is he's completely unreliable. He's reliable when he wants to be and unreliable 70% of the time. This is the man who's been a war hawk auguring for us to go into Ukraine before there was even a war there. Going back to the bombing years, don't worry, we're going to take care of this. We're going to get you weapons when there was no such program in place. He has also been, the only thing he's been reliable on is Supreme Court appointments, and they've turned out to be pretty sad anyway. Kavanaugh, very unreliable. And the last one, so look, Lindsey Graham, he's a rhino, but look, at least he should be there for the nomination confirmation. It's Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski that are gone. You can't count on them. But thankfully, we have Dave McCormick from Pennsylvania coming in. He's a solid conservative, another billionaire. There's a lot of billionaires going to Congress in D.C. But I think that Lindsey Graham has been unreliable throughout his career. He's another rhino. But on occasion, he does show true conservative colors. Hopefully, he'll step up. He likes Trump, or so he professes, and his actions seem to indicate that he's with Trump on many things. He needs to be with Trump on all these nominations.
I agree with you. Now I want to turn into the wars that are going on, because that's your strong suit, of course. Tell my audience, because right now there's a war going on in South Korea that is not really being covered. I think South Korea actually initiated martial law into their country right now. There's a lot of havoc going on there. Explain what's going on in South Korea right now to my audience. Well,
so for clarity, the war in South Korea, which was started with Kim Il-sung in 1950, never ended. We are at a state of war. It's never ended. 1953, there was an armistice, a settlement to stop the fighting, but the war has never ended. And there have been minor acts of aggression, attacks across the border, all kinds of commando raids, things like that have gone on for decades. And American service members have been killed in South Korea by North Koreans. Let's not forget about that. But what happened last night in South Korea, which was today here in the East Coast of the United States, at 11 p.m., the president declared martial law. And things got a little bit hectic and crazy, but it's okay. It all ended in 6 hours. Martial law is over. So what happened is the world's 13th largest economy, the home of Lucky Gold Star, LG, Samsung, and the largest shipbuilding operation on the planet these days, found itself in a situation that harkens back to 1980s when South Korea had a history of coups and martial law and things like that. So the president himself what he actually did was declare martial law 11 p.m. Legislators rushed to the Parliament building, but the military had gone there to shut people from getting into the building. At least 190 legislators got into the building. They held a parliamentary session, and to the man and woman, 190 of them voted to tell the president to rescind martial law. Under South Korea's constitution, that is a legitimate process. The parliament can tell the president to rescind martial law. And so there was a standoff for a couple hours. The press reported tens of thousands in the streets. I saw the live footage. There were hundreds, maybe a few thousand people in the streets. Most people were probably in bed at 11 o'clock on Tuesday night, So there were people out there, and they're peacefully demonstrating, and some people were very angry at the president. What happened is that within a few hours, he backed down and he followed the directive from the parliament. And 5 hours into the whole thing, he backed off, and there's no martial law now. What will likely happen now is the president, who's a conservative, will probably face an impeachment from the parliament that's very angry with him right now. He's become very unpopular in South Korea of late because of a scandal involving his wife. Also, his party got shellacked in the elections earlier this year. So his political party didn't have a majority in parliament. So it's kind of like, our president having the House against him, the parliament was against him. So he's kind of a tough spot. This is not going to go well for him. And I really don't know what it was all about, but he claimed that North Korea was behind what's happening there and that many members of the parliament were disloyal. It has a lot to do with the fact that the parliament has been seeking to impeach many of his appointments, his judges, his officials. And so the whole thing is quite crazy. This is a country that much of the world now saw as a legitimate, solid, democratic state with a constitution where people obey the rule of law. And just in September, a couple of high, well-regarded South Korean political analysts said, there's no chance, because there's been a rumor that he was going to have martial law declared throughout this year. And a couple of high-level analysts said, no, it's impossible. This is South Korea. It would never happen. Well, guess what? It happened. But here's the thing. Most South Koreans probably never knew it happened. They went to bed before 11. They got up at 6 or 7 in the morning, and the martial law was already off.
It was very hard for me to see because I had relatives that lived in Seoul, South Korea for many, many, many years. They live in Canada now. So like you said, people think of South Korea, no worries. But now people are like, oh my God, like they're nervous now. Because again, war, South Korea, war between Taiwan and China. We still have this war going on between Ukraine and Russia. And then we still have the war in the Middle East. So for our viewers, kind of compare and contrast what we saw in South Korea to what's going on in Ukraine and Russia, and also what's going on in Israel and the Middle East.
Sure. Let me just cover a little bit more on the South Korea thing, why it's so particularly important to Americans. There are 28,000 American military service members based in South Korea. And since the 1990s, families are also there. Back before then, it was too dangerous. So family members are also there, kids, wives, husbands. And then on top of that, we've got civilians who work there. So there's probably about 60,000 Americans related to the Department of Defense that are in South Korea. And many of them are in places very much in harm, close to the inner border there, the inter-Korean border. So that's why it's important. South Korea is one of the most staunch U.S. allies in the Pacific region, along with Japan and also the Philippines. And we could argue Taiwan, but the government say they're not an ally, but they are an ally. Let's just be honest. But South Korea and Japan, the U.S. form a triad that's not formally a triad by treaty, but mutual defense pacts amongst those players are there to counter the Soviet Union, now Russia, and also to counter China in East Asia. And that's a serious problem if South Korea's government would go wonky or go sideways. So the State Department and Biden were caught in a very difficult position because I don't think they saw this coming. I didn't see it coming. And I didn't either. While South Korea is not a major focus area for me, I do watch the whole globe. So I was caught a little bit by surprise, especially after I listened to the South Korean analysts say it wasn't going to happen. Let's turn that over to Korea, or not to Ukraine, where we have a hot war going on. Now, you'll notice that on Trump's watch, there were no attacks by Russia on any of its neighbors. But under George Bush, Russia attacked and undermined the banking system of Estonia with cyber warfare. They invaded Georgia. They got involved in Nagorno-Karabakh and Azerbaijan, endless conflicts. That's under George Bush. Then under Barack Obama, of course, they famously invaded, occupied, and annexed Ukraine, and then the eastern part of Ukraine, the Donbass, and they kept that territory. Trump comes along, They don't bother anybody. They behave themselves. They stay in their sandbox because I think he doesn't know if what Trump's going to do. Trump leaves office and Joe Biden, we see what happens. 70,000 Russian troops move to the border with Belarus and with Ukraine 6 weeks after Biden becomes president. And this is after 9 days after his presidency began on February 1st of 2021. Myanmar's military overthrew a democratically elected government, a thoroughly corrupt government, but they overthrew a democratically elected government and put the leaders in prison, including a Nobel laureate who's currently still in prison in her late 70s now. And so Biden said nothing about it. He did nothing about it. The world didn't stand up. They just ignored what happened in Myanmar, which of course used to be called Burma. And so that kind of sent a signal to Putin, hey, there'll never be anybody dumber than this clown sitting in the White House. Now's my time. And so he moved the troops and they prepared and they resourced, they got ready and they invaded. And they had the dumbest offensive battle plan I've ever seen in my life. I mean, a 6-year-old could have come up with a better battle plan. The Russians could have beaten Ukraine, but they didn't. And the valiant defense by Ukraine. Here we are years later in a slogfest. It's just going nowhere. But of course, Joe Biden is trying to dig us into a war with a nuclear armed power. And what has he done? He's authorized use of ATACMS, U.S. tactical missiles that have a range of 190 miles, 300 kilometers for offensive action into Russia. And then on top of that, the morally repugnant approval of anti-personnel landmines, which killed 85% of the people killed or maimed are civilians historically by those things, not service members. It's horrific. It's unbelievable. And there's been escalation in this conflict, hybrid warfare going on. The Sea Lion 1 cable, which is the main data cable from Finland to Rostock in Germany, linking the Finns with Europe for data, internet communications, was severed. They believe it's a Chinese ship, which is now being trapped in the Baltic by NATO fleets, keeping it there from different countries. And the cable from Sweden to mainland Europe was snapped, cutting off. And on top of that, we've got all kinds of issues with border issues between Finland and Russia now that the longest contiguous border with Russia in NATO is Finland, a country that for nearly a century was neutral and now is part of NATO. Sweden has been neutral since Charles XII, and now they are also a part of NATO. This whole thing is out of control. Jens Stoltenberg and Joe Biden ought to be called up and hauled before somebody and asked why they have been pushing a proxy war in Ukraine for the past 3 years. The government of Ukraine is totally illegitimate. We got a former comedian who is the biggest grifter in Europe, short of Montenegro. It's well known how corrupt that country is and has been for years. It's quite frightening. Biden is upping the tempo. He's just announced another $725 million of military equipment to be sent to Ukraine. Look, I don't think there are enough Ukrainian men and Russian men that can die on behalf of Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky. It's just really sad.
That's why Zelensky keeps recruiting American troops to die on his soil. He's like, come on over. We need you. Give us more money. We need you. And as you know, Zelensky wants to be a part of NATO. And he basically said and gave, the United States an ultimatum. If you put us into NATO, we'll stop the war right here and now, which is insane. It's crazy.
Well, the problem here is that Ukraine is not a treaty partner. We have no defense responsibility. We didn't do a 1994 agreement to convince them to give up their nuclear weapons, but Russia also was a party to that. And the idea wasn't that Russia and the U.S. would come to blows. The idea is that Russia and the U.S. would protect Ukraine from a third party. Say Romania got crazy and attacked or something like that, or Poland or Belarus. So it wasn't. And so, this argument from Zelensky now that he's willing to give up the territory he's lost if he becomes part of NATO is ridiculous. There's no basis whatsoever for Ukraine to be part of NATO. They couldn't even get into the European Union. They were so corrupt. Exactly. Why in the world would we bring them into NATO, which is not just a military alliance, but it's also a political alliance, which is often lost on people. We have ambassadors in Brussels who go to, 3. We have one to the European Union, we have one to Belgium, and we have an ambassador to NATO. America has 3 ambassadors in Belgium. It's not unique, though. We have 3 ambassadors in Rome as well. One to the Vatican See, or the Holy See, one to Italy, and one to the World Food Program.
and I just wanted to pivot, to the war that's going on in the Middle East. As you know, Prime Minister Netanyahu is doing everything he can to annihilate the enemy once and for all and bring all the hostages back. I will be talking later in our segment about how President Trump feels about bringing those hostages back. But how can we stop that war in the Middle East? And people always try to put the war between Ukraine and Russia and Israel and the Middle East together. They're completely separate wars. It's a completely different, what's the word I'm trying to say? It's completely different. You can't compare what's going on with Ukraine and Russia to what's been going on in Israel and the Middle East. What's been going on with Israel and the Middle East has been happening for thousands and thousands of years. What's been happening with Ukraine and Russia is something that's brand new. So, just a couple minutes for my viewers, educate them on the difference between Ukraine and Russia and what's been happening in the Middle East.
Well, you've kind of hit on it. Ukraine-Russia is also a long-term conflict, but it's also a conflict for Eastern Europe. It's not one that really has as big an impact on the world as NATO and Biden and the Western leaders want to imply. The far bigger concern is what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening in Israel. And listen, as far as the Middle East, we had peace. The Abraham Accords, the most historic peace agreement in the history of the Middle East ever. Amazing. Morocco restored diplomatic relations. There's now mill-to-mill exchanges between Morocco, well, before Gaza, between Morocco and the Israeli Defense Forces. There was daily flights resumed between El Al and I think Marrakesh is where it was. But anyway, the flights were restored, and we had traffic. And the Moroccans, Air Morocco was also flying, and there's a reason for that. Israel is full of Moroccan Jews who fled Morocco to go to Israel after the state was formed. Like much of North Africa, Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, but also especially Algeria. Lots of Jews went there, but Morocco had the biggest number of Jews from North Africa that went there. But the thing is that this is an area that the misrepresentations and the lies told about the Middle East are endless. First of all, we hear about the Palestinians are indigenous. Yeah, so are the Jews, and they've actually been there longer. And there have always been Jews there, even though there's diaspora and the Romans basically destroyed the Jewish community and spread them all over, and they spread all over the world. Jews have always been there. But here's the problem. I saw this from a departing Norwegian diplomat who's leaving the United Nations. He says, politics failed in Israel, Gaza. No, it didn't. Let me read this from Hamas's covenant. This is the preamble of Hamas's covenant. And this is the group that won elections in 2006 and a suspended government, and they ruled Gaza illegitimately. They say in their preamble, Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. You cannot reason, you cannot negotiate with a party, an organization whose primary focus, its overarching goal is the elimination of the Jewish state, which is not simply a Jewish state. It's a country full of Christians, Druze, Muslims. There are 2 million Arabs who live in Israel who are Israeli citizens. They serve in the Knesset. They serve in the IDF and the police forces. They're judges. They're business owners. They're landowners. This nonsense that's told about Israel is ridiculous. Now, I come from a position where I'm a little better informed than many people because I've actually lived in Israel briefly back in the 1990s for several months, and it was an interesting experience. But I'm just the difference here is that the Middle East is a powder keg. And what happens in Israel affects the entire Middle East. And so you can have something happen in Tunisia, it won't affect the Middle East. You can have something happen in Morocco, it might not affect it, but anything that happens in Israel, because of the nature of the Arab-Israeli conflict politically, I'm not talking about armed conflict, but political conflict, it affects the world. It really does. I mean, look what happened. Israel was nearly drawn into the Gulf War the first time around because they launched Scud missiles from Iraq into Israel. They weren't even a party to the war. They just started firing missiles at them. And if it hadn't been for the restraint of the Israeli government and the deployment of Patriot missile batteries to Israel, they would have fired back and Israel would have been in that war. And then Egypt would have turned on us and they would have fight the Israelis and Jordan. It would have been a mess. But it is a conflict that goes back a long time. And quite frankly, there's so much emotion tied to it, to be fair, on all sides, that the only resolution is for people to grow up and be adults. We had an offer by Ehud Barak for a two-state solution. Now that seems to be the argument. They're claiming the Israelis don't want one, but they did offer a two-state solution under Ehud Barak. And unfortunately, Yasser Arafat had no interest in that because the PLO and now Hamas's goal is not a two-state solution. It's the removal of everyone except Muslims from what is known as Israel.
Correct. And I just have one last question for you, Colonel. How are we, the people, going to take our country back? Meaning the people that voted for President Trump, the people that want his appointments to go through. How are we going to help President Trump to make sure that his agenda goes forward and to make sure that his appointments go forward?
Well, you mentioned Scott Pressler earlier in the broadcast. Folks are going to have to do the sort of stuff Scott did. I was unaware of your actions, so I'm glad to hear you were doing as well. Of course, I'm here in central Pennsylvania. The PA, everyone loved PA this election. This was the place everyone's attention was at from around the world. But Scott Pressler was prescient, and he came to Pennsylvania and put a lot of effort in up here. Next time around, it's New Jersey, Nevada, and possibly Virginia, all of which are within a few 100,000 votes or less of taking back Nevada. It's just 60,000 votes. People need to vote for conservatives, not Republicans, conservatives. And unfortunately, there are no conservatives left on the Democrat side. So that means by default, they'll be Republicans. But you have to be aware of the Olympia Snows, the Susan Collins, the Lisa Murkowskis, the Mitch McConnells out there, the Paul Ryans in the House. And unfortunately, I had learned a very difficult lesson myself. I ran for the state legislature this year. And I find that much to my naivete, that even at the state legislature level, the dirty politics by Republican Party officials is shocking. So you need to educate yourself on what you want to happen in the country, and you need to find who the true conservatives out there and go vote for those people. Get them in office, because if we don't retain control of the House, if we don't retain control of the Senate, then it all goes backwards very quickly. Woke is not dead. Elon Musk seems to be very fond right now saying that we've defeated woke. We have not. We have not defeated woke. The Democrats are in disarray. They will recover. The woke left will not give up. Black Lives Matter has not written its final chapter. The nonsense with men as women in women's sports is not over. We're fighting this battle every day. Boise State just had to forfeit their semifinal against San Jose because they weren't going to play against a biological male. And I have ordered some Boise State kit just to wear in support of Boise State, because I respect those women and what they're trying to do. It's not over. We have to fight each and every day. And you start in your local government, on your municipal councils, your borough councils, your city councils, your county administrators, and from there. And that's where you change. You get conservatives in there so they can get notoriety, attention, experience, and go to higher offices like Congress and take this country back.
I 100% agree with you. Colonel, you have been a great guest and a wealth of knowledge for my viewers and nationwide. I'd love to have you come back, because you have just so much to offer, and I love it. How can my viewers follow you?
Well, they can find me lots of places, but the most successful place to be able to find me is on YouTube until I get censored again. I was taken off after January 6th. Yeah, I have been canceled. And unfortunately for me, I was an intelligence officer on active duty. So I couldn't go on social media when the likes of Steven Crowder and Tim Pool and all those guys when they were needed by YouTube to become big and famous. By the time I got on, they were big and famous, and they could censor you and it wouldn't hurt them. But you can find me on YouTube. And the two main channels, my U.S. Politics channel is my original, which was taken away for 23 months. And I appealed it a third time and they restored it.
Wow.
That is at Real Chris Wyatt. And that's mostly U.S. politics these days. I used to have almost 3,000 videos on there, but in abundance of caution, I removed a lot of them when they restored my channel. And then the other channel, which is where I do a daily news program, I start with Africa and work around the world and wind up with U.S. news. It goes about 90 minutes every day, and it's based on South Africa time. And since they don't have daylight savings time, right now it's 11 o'clock in the morning. Normally it's at noon in the spring and summer. And that is at Colonel Chris Wyatt. Spell it all out, at Colonel Chris Wyatt on YouTube. You also can find me on Twitter and Gitter and Gab, but nobody follows me on there. So, I mean, I've been on Twitter for freaking almost 20 years and I've got 1,900 followers. So, but on the other channels, I've got an aggregate about 150,000 people that view me on all the other platforms.
That's awesome. And we'll have Billy put up all of your websites and ways to follow you during the podcast and also after the podcast. Thank you so much, Colonel, for coming on. Love to have you back. This has been great. Like I said, you are a wealth of knowledge, and we will be back right after the break. Hi, I'm Alexandra Levine. I'm a professional opera singer, actress, TV, and radio personality. Since 2015, I've been a volunteer, a field director, and a campaign manager, learning the ins and outs of the political world. That's why I became a political consultant. My job is to lead you to victory with organization, structure, and the mindset of winning for your district or state. With my guidance and direction, I can keep you focused on the things that matter to the people and advise you on key issues that need to be addressed. If you're a serious candidate that is serious about winning, then book a consultation with me today. Go to levineconsulting.co. You'll be happy you did. And that's me, everybody. Alexandra Levine. As you know, I own my own political consulting firm, levineconsulting.co. That is levineconsulting.co. I am currently recruiting candidates for the 2026 to 2028 election, specifically on the state and local level. I do work on the federal level as well, but as we heard from our previous guests, we got to start locally and work our way up, especially in liberal states and liberal counties. So if you are one of those people that are serious about running, you have a serious plan, you know how to run, you don't need training, you're already trained in how to run, please go to my website, levineconsulting.co, and book a consultation with me today. We just had a phenomenal guest, Colonel Chris Wyatt. He is an amazing guy. He has so much knowledge on the Middle East, on what's going on in Ukraine, on what's going on in South Korea, and we hope to have him back on the program. Well, speaking of the Middle East, what's going on in Israel, as you know, we just celebrated the one-year anniversary of October 7th, where 1,200 innocent lives were murdered, burned, tortured, and raped. And unfortunately, we had an American Israeli. His body was discovered. He was murdered on October 7th, and we're going to put his name up. He was Captain Omer Neutra, American Israeli hostage. Omer Neutra announced dead in Gaza captivity. He is from New York. He died on October 7th, and then Hamas yanked his body into Gaza, and the Israelis, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, they just discovered his body yesterday. His funeral was today. Again, what happened on October 7th was a complete tragedy. We have had multiple American hostages that are under Hamas rule, some alive, some are dead. I've been told there's at least 3 American hostages alive still under Hamas rule. As you know, the Israeli Defense Force was working hard to get Hirsch Goldberg Pollen out of there. His parents were very vocal about getting Hirsch back. The IDF was on their way to get him, and unfortunately, Hirsch Goldberg Pollen was executed and shot in the back of the head, his back, everywhere. And when the IDF went to get him, he was already dead. And we know that Hirsch Goldberg Pollen was loved by many people. And these were young men. These were young men in their early 20s. Captain Omer Neutra died at the age of 21. They discovered his body a year later. Now he's 22. Like I said, he was from New York. And it was so tragic what happened to him on October 7th and many others. But we still have over 100 hostages still under Hamas rule. And I can tell you, Prime Minister Netanyahu and the President Herzog are doing everything they can in their power to bring those hostages back and to end this war. They have 2 missions: to annihilate the enemy once and for all, and to bring all the hostages back. But the fault goes to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They know there's American hostages there. They've been there for over a year. Why haven't they gone in there and gotten those hostages out? And why do they blame the Prime Minister of Israel, blame the IDF and say they're not doing enough? No, Joe Biden, you're not doing enough. Kamala Harris, you're not doing enough. Kamala Harris called for the IDF to stand down. She lied about the Israeli Defense Force giving humanitarian aid to Gaza. She said they weren't giving humanitarian aid to Gaza, which was a lie. She opened her mouth so much that there was an attack in the Druze community where innocent children were murdered on a soccer field because of her rhetoric. And this was right after Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu came to the halls of Congress and met her. By the way, she wasn't present for his talk. It was the 4th time that he had talked in front of the halls of Congress. It was historic. And she decided to go to a sorority event in Indiana, in Indiana that day with her sorority sisters. And Joe Biden wasn't present at all. But President Trump has spoken. He has spoken about the tragedy that's going on over there and wants those hostages released. He actually wrote a very powerful Truth Social, and Billy's going to show it right now, what President Trump wrote. Here we go. Everybody is talking about the hostages who are being held so violently, inhumanely, and against the will of the entire world in the Middle East. But it's all talk and no action, exclamation. Please let this truth serve to represent that if the hostages are not released prior to January 20, 2025, the date that I proudly assume office as President of the United States, there will be all hell to pay in the Middle East. And for those in charge who perpetrated these atrocities against humanity, those responsible will be hit harder than anybody has been hit in the long and storied history of the United States of America. Release the hostages now. As you can tell, President Trump is extremely pissed that the hostages have not been released. Again, this is under Biden and Kamala's watch. President Trump has a very great relationship with Bibi Netanyahu. They have been talking. When Bibi Netanyahu went to Mar-a-Lago with his beautiful wife, Sarah, they had a beautiful embrace. And I know for a fact that Bibi Netanyahu is very excited and happy that President Trump is going back into the White House to finish the work that they started together, to expand the Abraham Accords, which Bibi Netanyahu wants to call it the Abraham Alliance. I was a national faith there for President Trump. I was on every conference call in regards to faith. I was there when the talks were happening with Rick Grinnell and Jason Greenblatt and Jared Kushner and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Peter Navarro to expand the Abraham Accords. Saudi Arabia was next on the list. This was an important alliance that brought peace to the Middle East, and it needs to continue. We need to bring the hostages back. Again, we have 3 confirmed American hostages under Hamas rule. Elon Alexander is one of them. I talked about him in one of my rallies that I did in Frederick County, Frederick City, with Fred Profiter and my good friend, our good friend, Seth Eisenberg, who's the conservative corner, 7 p.m. Eastern on the Patriots Prayer Network. We did rallies with Frederick County, Frederick City, with Fred Profiter and Seth Eisenberg's club. And we brought awareness. And we will continue to bring awareness until these hostages are back. And there's a lot of hostages that are dead. But their bodies need to be retrieved so that their loved ones can bury them. There is nothing more heartbreaking than to bury your child. A parent should never have to bury their child. Their child is supposed to succeed them, not the other way around. And I feel for these parents. I've talked to them. I've met them. I feel for them. And I can tell you, the Prime Minister is doing everything he can to bring your loved ones back, dead or alive. He wants you to give them proper burials, and he wants to bring them back alive. I know for a fact that there is congressmen such as Congressman Corey Mills and others that have done everything to bring these hostages back. My Governor Ron DeSantis, has brought hostages back because there's a lot of Israeli Americans and a lot of Americans that go to Israel, that live in Israel, that visit Israel during the religious holidays such as Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Simchat Torah. It's called the Chagim. It's been a year now. This is under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's watch. We cannot continue. We cannot continue. And we cannot continue having the rise of anti-Semitism happening in this country. We cannot continue to have political bias in the classroom. As some of you know, my main mission is to mandate Holocaust and Israel education in all 50 states nationwide. I did it in Pennsylvania with State Senator Doug Mastriano. I'm working on it in the state of Maryland right now. I worked on it in Arkansas, Arizona. Fixed it in California. Fixed it in Oregon. And more states will be joining. We are not just going to have a week of teaching the Holocaust. It is going to be an entire year, not just semesters. And it's going to be K through 12. On the college level, I'm working with the Israeli government to submit snippets or parts of the 47-minute video of what Hamas did to the 1,200 innocent people. My father and I watched that 47-minute video in its entirety. We had nightmares. We heard the screams. We saw the heinous acts that Hamas did. But it needs to be shown and it needs to be seen, especially on the college level. These Gaza encampments need to go. And President Trump has said that anybody that pushes pro-Palestinian propaganda and pro-Hamas propaganda will be removed from the school, will be fired. Not just resigned and stepped down, but actually fired. As you know, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik was notorious in getting rid of these deans and presidents from these liberal colleges who pushed for Gaza encampments and said, quote, it depends on the context, when these pro-Hamas people were calling for the genocide of Jews, which goes against the Student Code of Conduct. I'm an NYU alumni. I also took classes at Harvard University. I conducted services at the Harvard Hillel. I went to the MIT Hillel and the Columbia University Hillel. I was a part of the JCS Theological Seminary, working to become a Chazan and also a part of the rabbinic school. And I saw the propaganda that was going on. Also, I've been very instrumental in working with liberal colleges and certain colleges in the state of Maryland, such as Towson University and the Towson University Hillel, to combat the BDS resolutions that are being passed on campus. Thank God they are non-binding resolutions, but it's still scary that schools are pushing this. President Trump has stated that any school that pushes a BDS resolution, they will stop the federal funding. No federal funding goes to these schools. We also, as you know, are dealing with an illegal immigration problem. We have illegal Syrian and illegal Afghan refugees and illegal Lebanon refugees. We have terrorists coming into our country illegally. The Mossad, which is the Israeli FBI, CIA, has warned American intelligence about this, has warned the CIA, the FBI, and other central intelligence agencies here in America that we have terrorists entering our country illegally, and they do not have our best interests at heart. We have the drug cartels that are in here illegally, and they push young children to come here. They sex traffic them, they human traffic them, they child traffic them, and we have fentanyl pouring into this country. The new border czar, Thomas Homan, who's a personal friend of mine, he has stated to leave now. Get out now, because he will remove you. We're having issues with mayors that want to keep these illegals in their cities and keep having what they call sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. Any mayor, any county executive that harbors illegals will be jailed, and their jobs will be taken from them. We're having an issue right now with the mayor of Frederick County, Maryland, who said to the people of Frederick County, Maryland, that taxpayer dollars are going to be to harboring and funding these illegals. Any licensed insurance agent that provides healthcare to illegals, their license should be removed, revoked, and they should go to jail. That is illegal. I'm a licensed insurance agent. I would never, under any circumstances, give healthcare to illegals. Ever. It is illegal to do so. Again, let me remind everybody that if you want to come here, you have to come in legally and through the correct portals of entry. Like Thomas Homan has said, you must do it the legal way or don't bother coming. I happen to be on the border under Biden's administration and Trump's administration. It was day and night. Under the Trump administration, the border was the safest it ever been. Border Patrol and ICE agents told me nobody wants to come through here illegally because they know that they will be stopped, they will be jailed, and they will be told to go back to their place of origin. But under the Biden-Kamala Harris administration, hundreds, thousands, millions of people have come here across the border illegally. ICE agents and Border Patrol told me it's too excessive. It's too much. And what is the Biden-Kamala Harris administration now doing? Allowing another big migrant caravan coming to the United States from Mexico. What did the new president of Mexico say? She supposedly said she had a great conversation with President Trump. President Trump said he talked to her. Everything sounded great. And then what did she do? She said, I'm not closing the border. Why isn't she closing the border? Why is she allowing illegals to come into the United States? She knows that President Trump is tough on this. She knows that he appointed tough people to combat this. And she also knows that he will put massive tariffs on her and massive tariffs on Canada too if they continue to allow illegals coming into the United States. And if they continue to allow China to rip us off and other countries to rip us off, like Canada and Mexico, they continue to rip us off, the tariffs are coming. He is not messing around. Just like that tweet, he said, release the hostages before I get inaugurated. It is disgusting what's going on. And President Trump said he will pardon the January 6ers, but Joe Biden could do it right now. No, he decided to pardon a real criminal, his son, Hunter Biden. And he'll probably pardon another real criminal, his brother, very soon. That's why the deep state establishment, they're freaking out about Trump's appointments like Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. because they know that those guys are going to get in there and clean house. I feel bad for what happened to the American Omer Neutra, and I pray for the American hostages. I pray that they come back safely and alive. But we can't be complicit, guys. Again, President Trump is only one man. He can't do it on his own. We, the people, voted for him. The people that voted for him need to make sure that his appointments are confirmed. We need to make sure that his agenda is pushed forward. Again, as a political consultant, my job is to vet proper candidates and get the right people in office that have our best interests at heart. I will not work with anyone that undermines President Trump. I will not work with anyone that doesn't support President Trump, that attacks President Trump, that backstabs him. Not interested. Again, the people voted for an America First MAGA movement agenda. And those are the only people that I will work with and invest my time with. But you have to have a plan in place. You have to put a proper business plan into place, and you have to be serious. You do not have to be trained in running. You should already know how to run by putting your plan of action together. Again, the message tonight is, let's all do the right thing. Let's all follow the law. But again, if you hear any Democrat that says no one is above the law, you call them a liar right to their face, because they are liars. Joe Biden proved that he's a liar once again. And I don't blame his dementia this time. He knew exactly what he was doing. And Dr. Joe Biden knew what he was doing too, because she said she favors the pardoning of her son. Of course they were going to pardon their own son. Of course. They pardoned a known criminal, a known pedophile. Let us all digest this, and let us all never forget. Again, I want to encourage everybody to like and subscribe. Go to @ThePatriotsPrayer on X, @ThePatriotsPrayer on Facebook, @ThePatriotsPrayer Network at Rumble. You can also follow me at Alexandra Levine on Facebook, at Alexandra LEVI20 on X, at ARLevine85 on Truth Social, at ARLevine85 on Instagram, and at Levine Consulting on YouTube. We have some great shows. We have The Bearded Patriot. He's on 7 to 8 p.m. every Tuesday night Eastern. And we also have, like I said, the Conservative Corner with my friend Seth Eisenberg every Sunday night at 7 p.m. We have Elena Barbara, the Elena Barbara Show. She's on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. She also does afternoon shows. We have Two Guys in a Coup. We have Damon Galdo with Jersey Shore. We have some great shows on here at the Patriots Prayer Network. Please like and subscribe. If you're also interested in sponsoring my show, Alexandra 360, and shows, and I would say the entire Patriots Prayer Network, please DM me. Please follow me at Alexandra Levine and inquire and ask. We're always looking for sponsors. We're always looking for anybody that wants to contribute to the Patriots Prayer Network. Again, this has been a great show, a great hour. We had a great guest. We're going to put up his information so you all can follow him, retired Colonel Chris Wyatt, and we'll have him on again. And once again, I like to repeat myself sometimes. And once again, everybody, the reason you listen and the reason you watch is you are no idiot.